If you want to be more efficient and effective while running your business with more inner peace, then working on the core of your issues instead of putting on a band-aid is vital. Welcome to the Business Brain Podcast.
I'm your host, Esty Rapport, and here to help you improve your 28 cognitive functions, the 28 things that make up thinking. In each episode, we'll discuss a real-life challenge, why you might be struggling with it, and give you practical strategies so all areas of your life will improve.
One of the common struggles with ADHD is having a hard time with executive functions. But why? Is it due to a lack of dopamine? Is it maybe because they simply can't? What causes the executive dysfunction, and what can one do about it? That's what's coming up next on the Business Brain Podcast, episode 426. But first, want a super easy to understand, super easy to implement resource on the cognitive functions? I've got you. Grab a copy of your essential guide to cognitive functions at lifefixuniversity.com/guide. Now, for today's real life challenge, imagine you have ADHD, and instead of getting yourself organized, you find yourself going down the rabbit hole of searching why people with ADHD struggle with executive functions. What are executive functions? Executive functions are the skills we use to organize and act on information. There are 8 key executive functions. As I share them, if you've got any knowledge of the cognitive functions, and you know who you are, if you know what I'm talking about, I want you to think about the connection, okay? Here we go. 8 key executive functions. Although there are different people that divide them differently, these are the most commonly accepted 8 key ones. Number 1, impulse control. Number 2, emotional control. Number 3, flexible thinking. Number 4, working memory. Number 5, self-monitoring. Number 6, planning and prioritizing. Number 7, task initiation. And number 8, organization. It is super common for people with ADHD to struggle with executive functions. Often, people will tell you, because you have ADHD, you will struggle with cognitive functions. Notice what I've said there. Because you have ADHD, you will struggle with cognitive functions. But if you've been here for a while, you know I'm going to have a different perspective. You see, thinking is not one big thing. Thinking is actually made up of 28 thinking skills called cognitive functions. Don't get it confused with executive functions. Cognitive functions are the 28 foundational thinking skills. They're the basis of everything we do. In order to do executive functions, in order to do almost any task in your life, you need to combine multiple cognitive functions together to be able to do that task, or to be able to do that executive functions. So for example, one of the executive functions is organization. In order to do the executive function of organization, you are going to need to use the cognitive functions, the foundational thinking skills of clear perception, comparing, categorizing, holding 2 or more pieces of information at once, and more. Yup. Many of those thinking skills together create the executive function of organization. Now, although people with ADHD struggle with executive functions, it's not because they have ADHD. It's because they have weak thinking skills. Because in order to do those executive functions, you need to be able to improve the foundational thinking skills. But guess what? The cognitive functions, those foundational thinking skills, are skills. And by definition, skills mean you can learn them. So that means you can learn these foundational thinking skills. And then when you combine them together, you'll be good at executive functions, even if you have ADHD. People with ADHD tend to struggle with similar cognitive functions. They may need to learn them in a different way than other people, but it doesn't mean they can't learn them. As soon as they improve those cognitive functions and learn how to use them with other cognitive functions, their executive functions have magically improved. In episode 426, we spoke about executive functions and ADHD. It's not your ADHD causing your weak executive functions. You simply can't do the executive functions if you've got some weak cognitive functions, some weak thinking skills. As soon as you improve those thinking skills, those executive functions will be stronger. Your challenge this week is to notice which cognitive functions are making it challenging for you to do your executive functions. Which thinking skills or which part of the executive functions are you struggling with? Because that is going to be highly related to the cognitive functions. If you need help figuring this out, you can take the cognitive function assessment at lifepicksuniversity.com/CF. It's a free assessment where we'll go through all the 28 cognitive functions, the 28 foundational thinking skills, and you'll be able to compare it to your executive functions and be able to see which thinking skills you need to improve to get better at executive functions. Have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you on the next episode.
That's all for this episode of the Business Brain Podcast. If you enjoyed it, please share it with 2 of your business friends so they too can gain from it, and you'll be helping us reach our goal of 1 million downloads by the end of 2025. Cheers to peak brain performance.